Glasses and I'm waving my arm. That doesn't always show you where I am when using a virtual background. Everyone has done a great job. I think we have you on mute. However, this is to be a discussion, so I hope that you will join us in conversation throughout this topic today. This is the town hall is meant to be a little bit more of a casual forum versus a webinar. So we definitely want to hear from people as we go through. I am here to host and present some information to start us all off. And then the conversation will continue with all of us and all of the members of our team from ALS TDI, the people who work at ALS TDI. And I'm going to have you raise your hands and wave them so that everybody can see you. All of us are here to help you today and at any point. You should be able to tell most of the team has ALS TDI written next to their names in their own rectangles. We all live in rectangles these days, don't we? It's a new kind of box. We are going to have a great conversation today. I'm going to start by introducing myself. Hold on. Now this is not going forward. 1 second. There we go. There I am in a different rectangle. My name again is Carol Hamilton. I am the Senior Director of Development here at the ALS Therapy Development Institute, ALS TDI. I've been at ALS TDI for 16 years. I will be here until there is no need for all of the hundreds of us who are here today to gather again. I will be here fighting for this community until there are effective treatments available to you. Joining me today amongst all of the other staff members is John Gang. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is John Gang. I've been with ALS TDI for a little bit shorter of a time than Carol. I've been here about 8 months, so that's about 3 months in the office and 5 months from my apartment. Before I came here, I worked in journalism, mostly covering science and research. And my job here is to keep you all informed about new developments in research, science, and clinical trials around ALS. And some of you might recognize my voice from Endpoints, which, if you haven't heard it, is our podcast about ALS, which is available on our website as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
We are super cool that we can say we're available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I don't know. I'm impressed. Okay, today we are going to be attacking the part 1 of a series of conversations around clinical trials in ALS. Today's will be a little bit more basic for some of you who have been in the community for a while, but it will not be for those who are somewhat new to the ALS community, a club you never wanted to join. I am pleased that I see a lot of faces of people who are incredibly engaged and well-informed in this community, because for those of you who are new to it, these are your big brothers and big sisters who are going to help you through. This is an incredibly supportive community. There's an awful lot to learn. It can be overwhelming. All of us at ALS TDI, all of the staff that you see here are here to help you navigate through the world of ALS, as are so many community members. We will help each other through it. Many of you have probably heard from Claire Reach or Terry Handler or Erin Stevens or myself in the last week as you registered. Please take a look and find them in these rectangles so that you can all keep in touch and know that they will be here throughout whenever to help you with all of your questions. So today, again, is a part one of a series. There is going to be a lot of temptation to ask questions that are far beyond where we intend to go today, and that is great and that is fine. You will help inform what direction we go in for the next two parts of this series. So excuse me and put up with me if I say I'm going to hold that question for the next one, but rest assured that there are staff members on this Zoom who are writing your questions down and making sure that when we go to put everything together for our next town hall conversation, they're saying to me, hey, Carol, hey, John, remember how Renee asked this question? Well, let's make sure that we cover it in the next one. So with that, we are going to be talking about what you need to know to begin your search for a clinical trial. And there's actually some meat on the bone in all of that. And first, I want to make sure that everybody knows who ALS TDI is, where we all come from, what we've been doing in this time that John and me and Alicia and Erin and Terry and all of us who are here, what we've been doing. We are the world's most comprehensive drug discovery effort aimed solely at ALS, as you see here. That is a real picture of our real lab in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We have a team of 32 full-time scientists who are dedicated solely to speeding the time up to get treatments to all of you and your family members who are so desperately waiting for them. A lot of our work is done with discovering and developing treatments in our own lab. We do a lot of partnerships with biotechs and pharmaceutical companies because we want whoever has skin in this game, whoever has something they want to advance to help you or your family member, we want to help them. We also run the world's first ALS precision medicine program, and that will rear its head in conversation as we go through. But today is really to talk about clinical trials, and we will talk about the precision medicine program if it is helpful along the way. Now, I'm going to unshare my screen, so bear with me and John on the tech end right now as he shares his. We want to introduce, especially those of you who are new to the community, to what the drug development process looks like, so we can talk about and you can understand what ALS TDI's role is in that process and what part of that process we're going to be talking about today. John, you good?
I was good except for the fact that I was muted, but now I'm good.
All right.
This is a video that myself and some talented members of our team collaborated on just to show what the process of drug development looks like. And this will also cover how clinical trials fit into that whole process. The way we chose to illustrate this process is with a funnel that we call the drug development funnel. And essentially, we chose a funnel because on the left side of this funnel, we want that to represent the millions of possible chemicals and compounds that could possibly be a drug. And through this long process, you go from millions of compounds to one FDA-approved drug that can be described to people with the disease. And the way this process starts is with something we call basic research discovery. And basic research discovery is basically just scientists trying to understand how a disease works, why it affects the body the way it does. So in the case of the ALS, we're asking, what are the mutations or environmental factors or other things that might be causing neurons to atrophy and die? And this happens in places like academic institutions and universities, or in biotech labs like ALS TDI, and researchers publish these findings in peer-reviewed journals to better inform the research community and just give people ideas of what they want to target with the drugs that they're trying to develop. And then this information sort of comes down the funnel, and that's where we find what we call drug discovery. And this is the process where researchers test compounds that are of the sort that might work as drugs and use them and test them to see which ones are promising. In order to do this, we're talking usually about millions or thousands of compounds. So in order to do this fast, they're generally first evaluated in test tubes or in vitro, which means in cells that have been cultured in like a petri dish or something like that. And some labs may test thousands or even millions of compounds in a single year. And ones that are show promise in these cells are called hits. And hits are what moves on into the next stage of the drug development funnel, which is what we call lead optimization or lead identification. And this is essentially testing in animals. As many of you probably know, mice are the most common one. We have this graphic of a fish because at ALS TDI, we also have a program coming online to do tests in zebrafish. But essentially what we're doing now, this is also called in vivo testing, is seeing, do these drugs make the animals better? And do they do them harm? Do they make them sick? Do they kill them? And if a drug seems to be effective in an animal model and it also seems to be safe, it doesn't do them any harm, that is when we go on into step 4. And step 4 is usually the longest step in this process, and this is clinical trials. This is what we're here to talk about today, and it's when drugs are finally tested in humans. And there are generally 3 phases of clinical trials. Phase 1, sorry about that. Phase 1, drugs are tested in small groups of healthy volunteers, and this is generally just to determine if the drug is safe. Does it have harmful effects once it's put into humans? Then after a drug passes a phase 1 trial, it moves into phase 2. And in this one, we're talking about hundreds of people, and that is usually people who now have the disease in question. And what they're looking for there is also safety, the first signs of efficacy, and they're also really important for determining what the proper dose of the drug is. Then once they pass the phase 2 trial, they can move on to phase 3. And phase 3 are really the big studies where we find out if these drugs are going to work. They're tested in up to several thousands of people at many different sites. And oops, sorry about that. A lot of buttons very close together. So in phase 3, several thousands of people, and these can take up to 1 to 4 years to evaluate the overall risks and benefits of the drug. Once a drug passes that phase 3 trial, it can be submitted to the FDA for approval. This process can take 10 years, which is a long time, especially if you're living with ALS, which is why there are a lot of advocacy efforts trying to speed up this process when it comes to drugs for diseases like ALS. So after going through this whole process, we go from thousands or millions of compounds to only a handful of drugs over a number of years. And that is that. I will hand this back over to Carol.
Thanks, John. Hold on, guys. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So that shows you that there's a lot of work that has gone in before you ever even see any of these therapeutic options available in clinical trial. It's a lot of the work that ALS TDI does. It's often called the Valley of Death. It is where most drugs fail before clinical trial. We do have to remember, though, that clinical trials are experiments. I think sometimes we forget, especially in ALS, where we so badly need effective treatments, that these are still experimental trials that are going on. But let's think about this. You've now been diagnosed with ALS. You are trying to figure out how to access and how to determine what trial might be the best for you. Now, first of all, the did you know here is a big deal. When I first came into the world of ALS, there was a clinical trial available, and it wasn't on such a great drug either. 50 is an awful lot in this country. When it says recruiting or not yet recruiting, we're going to talk about some of these terms so that we can help you understand them. And we're going to dive into that now. Here are some of the things that you're probably thinking to yourself if you are considering a clinical trial: what type you're interested in, how you determine what trials are out there that you might fit into, and will you fit into them? Are you eligible? And what terms should you, what vocabulary should you have? So we're gonna focus on one particular type of these two, which would be the interventional. But here would be one big group of people that would, kind of those widgets you saw John use, people outlines as the sign of those widgets. This would break it down quite a bit. An observational study is when an investigator is looking for the long-term effect of something, but they are not intervening, they are monitoring. If you have ALS, you are probably particularly interested in an interventional study, which means intervening, right? Testing a potential drug therapy in most cases and measuring the effect of that on the population. John talked about this. There are, in ALS, usually we talk about 3 different stages, phases of clinical trial, and I'm just going to review them again. And remember, everybody, I think I see signs of people finding it, but there is a chat function on here if you look at the bottom of your screen. And if you post any questions in that chat about anything that I say before I let you politely interrupt me, the team will find that, they will record it, they will make sure that they ask that question later for you on your behalf. If by any reason we screw up or we run out of time, we will be emailing you or calling you to discuss whatever question you ask in there. So please use that chat function for the time that you are muted. We will make sure that we get to it or address it personally on the side. Again, I'm just going to review these because they matter, and sometimes if we talk about them in different ways using different human voices like Jonathan's and mine, it will help you to understand. So phase 1, we are looking to see if the drug kills anybody. Is it safe? Nobody likes killing people. So we got to make sure that that's not going to happen. We've got to make sure a drug's not going to turn you blue. We got to make sure a drug isn't going to do something terrible to exacerbate your disease. Now, you might think, well, wouldn't you know that from the in vivo work that John just told me about that was done in mice and zebrafish? Mice and zebrafish aren't men and women. They have a mutated form, a version of ALS that we test therapeutics in, but we need to make sure that they're safe in people. In most cases, phase 1s are as short as possible. We want to get the answer, is this drug safe, as fast as we can so that we can move on to bigger trials. They are populated with as few people as possible because enrolling each person takes time. And very often they are done with what is called healthy volunteers, which means people who do not have ALS in this case. They are easier to find than all of you people with ALS. As many as we know there are, and as many that are joining us here today, there are certainly more people without ALS than there are with ALS. So Let's test it on them first because we're not looking for signs of efficacy, just safety. So that's how that will go. It's often a single dose. So you don't want to feel like you're being left out of anything here because one dose of any drug probably isn't going to cure a disease or even mitigate its progression. So that's what's happening in a phase 1. Great. I love that I see little, blinky blinks on the chat because that means you're asking questions. A phase 2, it's getting bigger. It's a bigger experiment. It will have people with ALS in the experiment. We will be, not we, because I don't do any clinical research. Just so you know, if you couldn't tell, I am not a scientist, but I am around them all of the time. I have them to ask questions of, and I can usually help to understand what regular people like you and me want to know. So that's my role in here is trying to translate sciencese into something that is palatable for the rest of us. So a phase 2 is powered larger, it's bigger in order to see statistical significance. We need something bigger to begin to maybe look for signs of efficacy, but still really looking for signs of safety, making sure it's tolerable. Sometimes we're looking at different doses in a phase 2. Phase 3, big one, right? This past year we had Brainstorm. We have one this year from Orphazyme, which is really great. We have clinical trials at all phases in ALS. Again, things that didn't happen before. A phase 3 is really looking at efficacy. It will hopefully tell us if a drug worked or not. Remember, this is still an experiment. Don't know, won't know until it reads out if it worked or not. Phase 4 is often a post-market longitudinal observation of efficacy and other issues. We're not going to really address that as much today. And some of the things that I just talked about that are topics within a phase 3 trial are going to show up again soon in the slides. But okay. So we looked at a funnel. John showed us a funnel on the drug development process a few minutes ago. Here's another funnel. Here's how you might want to try to find a trial that might work for you. So again, we're going to focus on the interventional studies in the United States on the left. On the right, those are real live numbers. If you live in Delaware and you are looking for an observational trial in ALS, there is one, and you can search for it. But we're going to stay on the left here and look at interventional studies. Again, these are usually drug studies trying to see if a treatment works. You will most likely want to look at currently or not yet enrolling or recruiting. That means that these are trials that are open now for people with ALS to sign up and register for and participate in. If they are not yet enrolling, that's okay. It means they will be imminently. So keep your eye on it. All right, so here's how this person searched. First, they looked for interventional studies. Then they looked for those studies that were currently or not yet enrolling. And then they said, I don't want to do a phase 1 because, Carol Hamilton told me that's a single dose. What do I want that for? I'm going to go straight to a phase 2 or a phase 3. Then there were 14 of them. The person lives in New York. It's important to them that they stay nearby. There are still 3 trials that they could potentially participate in. So again, that is more trials. That person in New York who wanted a phase 2 or a phase 3 that's currently or not yet enrolling, then there was, all told, throughout the entire country when I first started in this field. So as horrifying a situation as we're in where there is no effective treatment, if you guys are willing to participate in clinical trials, which is really very generous of you because you're contributing to the science as well, there are now more options than there ever were, even in the state of New York, under those parameters. Here's what it might look like when you are looking, at least on our website, to search for a trial. Now, I am going to take one tiny little break here and talk about a new tool that is available in our community that I just got to review, and so did some of our team with our partners at ALS. And their clinical trials group and their something other group, Phil, you can tell me later, that work together on their ALS signal dashboard. It is a wonderful platform and tool to do much like we're talking about here, searching for clinical trials. This information is available here on als.net. It will look like this. And some of your brothers and sisters in this fight at IMALS, who know very much what you are going through if you're searching for clinical trials, have helped to put together another tool. And just so you know, you hear there's not always collaboration in this field. Baloney. We talk a lot, and everybody who is on this Zoom here is here to support you and to help this journey easier, make this journey easier for you. Okay, back to this. Look up on the top, it says currently recruiting. We just talked about that. That means it's accepting participants. You then want to see that they intend to enroll 183 people. That's pretty big. That's way bigger than we would have seen in a phase 1, right? And usually in a phase 2, sometimes we see that. It is a single and multiple ascending dose. See if you look under treatment type. Now, treatment type could say anything. Here it says one of the more complicated things it can say. You don't have to worry too much about that. But in this case, excuse me, what that means is it's about titration. Think about it. If you go on a drug, even before you had ALS or before your family member had ALS, you sometimes have to ramp up, right? Until you get to an effective dose level for that drug. That's what this means here. A single ascending dose would be that, getting to a plateau where you're going to stay on that. Multiple ascending dose may mean that they're testing multiple doses, but you have to ascend to get to the maintenance dose. That is going to be the one that you're on. Trial type, double-blind, placebo-controlled, gold standard. Frustrating thing to every person with ALS, understandably. Double-blind, placebo-controlled trial means no one knows. No one knows. The investigator, the drug company, the clinician, the nurse in the doctor's office with you, the person giving you the shot, handing you the pill, whatever it is, they nor you know if you are getting drug or placebo. In a couple of minutes, we're going to get to like a glossary page, and placebo is going to be on there, and we'll talk more about why and what that means. I just want to continue walking you through this page so that you can be aware of what you're going to look at either on a page at ALS TDI or clinicaltrials.gov or the ALS Signal dashboard. So next it tells you who the sponsor is. In this case, this is Biogen. Often it will be a pharmaceutical company or biotech. Sometimes it may not. It will tell you who the primary investigator is. In this case, it's a thing, the Global Biogen Clinical Trials Center. Often it's a person, a real live scientist or a doctor. So you will see their name there. And important is contact information. When you get to the point where you have decided what's important to you in making your choice for a clinical trial, if you are having difficulty accessing the people who can let you into that trial or talk to you further, first you're going to talk to your clinician, then you're going to call one of us. Hey, if you're Erin, Terry, Claire, or Carol, raise your hands again like this. You're going to get in touch with one of us and we're going to help you figure out how to do that. You are not alone in this. On the right-hand side, in a minute, we're going to talk about that umbrella category enrollment criteria, again on that same page that we're going to talk about placebos on. But here are some of the things that make up that enrollment criteria. This is who is the group of people within those that have ALS that this drug company or sponsor is looking for to participate in their trial. Some of the things that are listed here, even though my rectangles are covering what the answers are, hold on, let me see if I can move that, yeah. Some of them have NA here, one of them does. I'll explain that. Not all of these are always going to be populated. It depends on the information that is public. Breathing ability. This is often included within inclusion and exclusion criteria, which is what makes up the enrollment criteria. So when you go to your clinic appointment, if you have ALS, or if you're accompanying someone with ALS to their clinic appointment, you're going to want to find out, you're going to want to know, as you're searching for clinical trials, what your breathing ability is. And it's measured using two annoying three-letter terms like everything else in this three-letter termed disease. FVC and SVC. FVC, forced vital capacity. SVC, slow vital capacity. For those of you with ALS who aren't sure what your FVC or SVC is, if you have blown into a tube and there's a ball in it, you've probably had it measured in your doctor's office, so that number is available to you. In this case, it is lung function greater than 50%. Those will vary. Sometimes they're 65, sometimes it's not applicable, sometimes it is. So these are the things that you're going to want to know. You're going to want to keep those records from your appointments so that you can have the information when you're searching for clinical trials. You probably are very well aware of how many months it's been since you were diagnosed or first felt symptoms with this disease. This is something you're going to want to read carefully. An awful lot of trials are, 18 months, 24 months from symptom onset. Remember that symptom onset and diagnosis are two different things. When you went to get your ALS diagnosis, you probably said to your doctor, your neurologist, but you know what? My foot was dragging starting about 5 months ago. Okay, so that was your symptom onset. Your date of diagnosis is that horrifying, horrifying, horrifying moment that I am sorry you had to go through in that appointment when your doctor told you you had ALS. I can't tell you how sorry I am if you heard those words, honestly. When your foot started to drag, if you reported that to your clinician, that was your symptom onset. There is some latitude sometimes in here in some of the trials. So again, you can fight for yourself to participate in a trial. So, if you've had ALS for 18 years and this particular trial is looking for somebody within 18 months of symptom onset or 12 months of diagnosis, they're probably not going to, send you flowers and let you in on this point. And if you've been living with ALS for 18 years, put your name in the chat group because we will send you flowers. So while there is some latitude, there's not always a ton. Non-invasive ventilation, this is BiPAPs in most cases. Trachs would be invasive ventilation. Very often there are trials where you cannot participate if you have been trached or vented. A diaphragm pacer, we're actually going to be taking this off our little thing here over here on the right because not as many people are using diaphragm pacers as they were in the past. So it will always show up in our exclusion criteria if that is the case, but it won't take up all of this space here. And edaravone usage, this is an interesting conversation. Edaravone, which is Radicava, known in Japan as Radicate. So before, right after edaravone, Radicava was approved by the FDA in August of 2017. There were trials that were ongoing, right? But no preclinical work or no phase 1, phase 2, phase 2A, phase 2B of that trial had combined Radicava, edaravone, Radicate, into their trial, right? So their trial was not designed to be able to look for treatment effect and distinguish it from potential treatment effect from Radicava. So early on, trials like Neurone, Brainstorm, we saw that people who were on Radicava were not eligible to participate, at least in that trial. We will see less of that now. because Radicava is considered standard of care, and the trials that have been ongoing, a good proportion of our population, our community, has been on Radicava in the interim. So we will see less and less of that. So that's what this page looks like. And I bet you have questions, but we're going to keep going because I can't remember what the next slide is. And what if it's really, really good? Ready? Okay. Here's what we talked about. Inclusion next year, exclusion criteria. It was all that stuff up on the right. Remember, it is annoying to have something that will exclude you. It can be devastating, far more than annoying, I'm sorry, to have something that could exclude you from participating in a trial that you're interested in. Remember that these are still trials and experiments, and that the trial sponsor is looking for a population of people in which they expect to have the most treatment effect, and a group of people with whom they believe have the best chance of tolerating and finishing their study. So it's rough when you're excluded from a clinical trial because of something that we just looked at. This day and age, I hope we will be able to find you another one. Know that every single solitary company that is putting together a trial in ALS cares very, very much about this population. They would like to take absolutely every single solitary person, but they have to be true to the science so that we can make sure that a drug works and gives it to everybody when you don't have to worry about placebo controls or how many doses you might get versus in an escalating dose trial, for example. So our goal is, with everyone's goal, is to find out if the drug works and make it available for everyone.
Carol, can we, I've been writing down a couple people's questions. Can you take a couple questions right now? Or do you
Sure, are they around this topic?
Yeah, they're pretty much around this topic. For
Great.
example, there's the first question from Mel. He'd like to know, would trials consider people not in the immediate city or in the area of the clinic? And the second part of his question is, if you're with another clinic, can you, and you're not registered for them, can they lobby for you to get into that trial?
You bet.
Okay.
And look, Mel, you are ahead of me. That's coming up in 2 slides.
Oh,
But,
okay.
the answer is yes. If you are willing to travel and capable of safely traveling, certainly things are a little bit different now in terms of, being able to travel safely. But while it would be wonderful if there was a clinic site for the trial you were interested in your backyard, the likelihood, unless you live in a major metropolitan area, it may not be the case. Although certainly with the Healy platform trial that is coming out, there are so many sites that trials will be available geographically a little bit more than they have been to people in the past. So yes, it does not have to be your own clinic that has a trial. You can go somewhere else to get it. You will want to engage your neurologist to help advocate for you. You will want to make sure and be honest with yourself about your ability to travel. But we're going to get to some of those other thoughts that would go into that too in one more slide. Terry, is there anything else like that before I keep going? Because we'll cover some of that too. You were on mute, and I think you're saying it's okay. Okay.
Hang on.
All right.
Oh, good.
Here are the terms we've been talking about. I am going to go to the middle because we've talked about the first 3 pretty well, and I'm just going to say a few more words on placebo ratio and double blind. A placebo, especially in a heterogeneous disease like ALS, allows the investigators to think of placebo as control, right? You have people who are on drug and you have controls. In a heterogeneous disease especially, you need placebo to be able to make sure that the effect is not caused by a placebo effect. I think everybody understands what that is. And also to figure out what the population would look like who wasn't on that drug coincidentally at the same time. Now, there are different placebo ratios. 1-to-1 would mean half the people are on drug and half are on placebo. Double blind is what you're going to see pretty much everywhere. That means, again, reminder, nobody knows, neither you, the doctor, the drug company, anybody, until it's unblinded who's on drug and who's on placebo. So 1-to-1 means half and half. 2-to-1 means 2 people are on drug to everyone who is on placebo. So the higher that front number, your better chance of being on the drug. We are beginning to see more creative trial design in the space of ALS, where we're seeing 2-to-1 placebo ratios. And I know that everyone would like to see that front number be even higher, and hopefully we will get there if we can. But again, remember, the numbers have to work in order for the scientists to be able to identify statistical significance. Gosh, that's a hard one to say. Okay, anybody have any questions that are pertinent to any of the enrollment criteria or the concept of placebo and double-blind trials?
Carol, I have a couple questions that people submitted to the chat, if I can read them off now.
Sure. Are they on that topic, Emily?
Yes.
Great.
So one person asked, they said, my husband has been seen by a neuro in March and was told after ruling everything else out, but is not yet hitting his LMN, that it is either PLS or ALS, and it could take us 4 years to know. He was seen again last week, and the new doctor said she couldn't be sure either way. He has all the symptoms. He's choking, speech is 98% gone, trouble swallowing. Is there any hope that he may be able to participate in trials since he's suffering from all the same symptoms? Maybe help him before it spreads to LMN.
That is a tough one, and we do hear that. You usually do have to have a confirmed ALS diagnosis. However, I am going to, this is exactly why we want a town hall, right? So that people can learn from others who have gone before them. Is there anyone on this call, please unmute yourself, if you were diagnosed with PLS and then eventually got an ALS diagnosis? Is there anyone in that category?
So I know Stormy spoke up. I don't know if you're gonna.
I can't hear you very well, Erin.
I know Stormy spoke up in the chat and said that she was speaking to Kelly, who was diagnosed with PLS, and said that their neuro wouldn't give them a PLS diagnosis until they hit 4 years with their symptoms.
Yeah, hi Kelly, I see you. 4 years. You know, I am aware of clinicians who want to see time pass. I do not, again, as a non-PhD or non-MD, I do not dare advise you on that, Kelly. If there is anyone who has an experience relevant to this, please speak up. Otherwise, Kelly will find you someone who does. And whoever asked that question, Emily, we will find them someone who has gone through this.
Awesome. And one more question was, I use CPAP for sleeping only. Will this affect me in any way concerning the breathing part of the trial?
Hopefully not, but you know, ask the question right up front. Shouldn't be a problem, but in some it could be, so just be right up front. You know, if there is a trial that is interesting to you, that you know you want to participate in, let's get right to them. We can help you ask that question of the right person if you'd like, so that you can know right off the bat.
Awesome. Thank you,
Okay.
Carol.
Yeah.
Oh,
Did
no,
you have another one, Emily or Terry?
There's a couple, but I think you might be answering them in a little bit, so I will bring them back up at the towards the end.
Okie doke. Okay, so now we're going on to a couple of more two more words that we kind of haven't covered that are important to know and understand in the world of intro to ALS clinical trials. The first is open label extension. So open label kind of sounds like what it is, right? So open label would be kind of the difference of a double-blind trial. Open label means everybody knows that everybody's on the drug. An open label extension is an extension to a clinical trial in which the people who participated in that trial get to go on drug, no matter if they were in the placebo group or in the treatment group. So in other words, Carol and John were in a clinical trial. John didn't know this, but he was in the placebo group. Carol was getting the treatment. We didn't know. Then the company announces that it will have an open label extension. Both of us will be able to go on that drug at that point. So this is something that you may want to look for when you're looking at clinical trials and what ones are right for you. Same with expanded access. So expanded access programs are regulated by the FDA, and they, under certain circumstances, especially in unmet medical need treatment areas like ALS, where there are not significantly disease-modifying treatments available to everyone, the FDA can have an expanded, we can have expanded access to an experimental drug, meaning you can make a case that, hey, I couldn't go on to into that clinical trial because I have a CPAP that I use at night, but I would really like access to it. I would like access to that experimental treatment before it is FDA approved. That is what expanded access is. You may have heard the term compassionate use. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, but these are things that you want to keep in your mind, again, when you're looking at what trials are right for you. Would there be an opportunity for you to participate in an open label extension at the end of the trial? Or is the company one that might consider offering expanded access to its experimental treatment? Any questions on those two concepts? Okay. All right, so here are your questions. Much like the geographical one, Terry, that you helped ask a couple of minutes ago. Is there a site that is accessible to you? How important is that to you? Are you willing to get on an airplane? Again, let's for one moment have a fantasy where we're not living in the middle of a pandemic, because certainly the answers to these questions change under the current circumstances, but they become more dire and more important, really. So is there a trial site that is accessible to you? Can you get to it? Are you willing to fly somewhere? How are you going to get somewhere to a clinical site if it is not nearby you? Are you willing to take on the expense of the travel if you're going to go somewhere far? Is there reimbursement for participation? Sometimes there is. What's your quality of life? What matters to you when you've been diagnosed with a disease that is a really rough one like ALS? Do you want to take the time away from your children to travel to a clinical site? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you want to wait and see if something's going to open in your area. How frequently do you need to go? Is it a trial that requires you to visit the clinic that you're either traveling to or hopefully just jaunting down the road to? Is it going to require you to be there 25 times a year? Or have they instituted some telemedicine into their trial design and you only have to be there twice a year? It varies. You want to think about that. Again, quality of life matters here. What's the placebo ratio? How big a chance are you willing to take? You want that number to be as big as possible at the front, right? 2 to 1, 3 to 1, whatever, 151. That would be fabulous. But how important is it to you that you might not be getting the drug? And do you want to look at a trial then that has a better placebo ratio than the one that's down the street from you? It's an awful lot to weigh. Does the trial have an open label extension? Will you be able to get onto that drug that you believe in because you're considering joining the clinical trial, but you're scared because the placebo ratio isn't so great? But hey, maybe it has an open label extension and you'll be able to access the drug that way at the end. All of these are really hard decisions to make. How long is the trial? How far into your disease are you? How long do you want to be doing this? Is that realistic? And as you think about all of these things, I'm going to ask that those of you that are on here, I see a couple of you that have participated in clinical trials, to be prepared to share your insights and experiences on making that decision with some of the newer member of the communities once we open this up, if you wouldn't mind. And, you know, your team here at TDI is willing to, we're not going to advise you, but we're going to listen, and we're going to help you ask yourself the right questions. If you'd like us to, we're happy to do that. Actually, we hate the fact that you have this disease, and so we're not happy to do it, but we are happy to help you in any way we can. Okay. Hit me up, Emily.
All right, so we have a couple more that were regarding exclusion criteria.
Okay.
So one was, will people with ALS that have participated in one trial be excluded from another?
Okay. You will most likely not be able to be in two interventional trials at the same time. You might be able to be in an observational one, an interventional one. And then there are periods of time called washouts, and anybody who wants to jump in here and talk about this, please feel free to do so. There would need to be a period of time in which the drug that is in your system that you were on a trial for, if you were on the drug, which you do not know most likely, has the opportunity to wash out of your system before you can enter another one. There are some trials that will not allow people who have been on stem cells, and I'm not just talking in clinical trial, but sometimes there are stem cell treatments that are done in different countries, or even some here in this country, that are not ALS specific. Again, trial designs can't always measure for what the impact of some of those would be. Now, certainly, I'm not talking about brainstorm in that case, although there would need to be a period of time for everyone who has participated in the neurone trial before they begin another. But of course, we are hoping that we will have news, great news from brainstorm next year. Now, I know that every single solitary person here wants to ask, what do we know about brainstorm, right? So I'm just going to cut that off, because we're going to talk about, specific clinical trials in other segments of this series. But I will tell you that they are still on track to read the trial out and announce the results of the trial next year. Trial is fully enrolled. There's no opportunity to be in it. It has been fully enrolled for a year. They're dosing their last patients, and we are all really excited and hopeful for that trial, certainly. But again, we'll talk about particular clinical trials going forward. I just wanted to get that out there because I know that there are a lot of people who want to know. Okay, what else, Emily? Anything?
Yeah, we have quite a few late addition questions. One is, if a trial requires you to stop Radicava, is it worth coming off for a trial?
Well, I can't answer that for you. That's a conversation that you're going to have with your neurologist. That is up to you and your neurologist. You are going to have to determine if you believe you are responding to Radicava. Again, but that's a medical decision. But one thing I want to show you guys, hold on, I think I still have these slides. I do, yay. So The precision medicine program that I mentioned briefly at the beginning at ALS TDI, this is also another tool, much like, some of the great tools that IMALS has been developing. This is one on the science end. This is a clinical program, a clinical study, not a trial. But if you are in the ALS precision medicine program, you can talk to anybody on our team for more specifics, but it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to leave your home, but what it can do is collect data on you that the scientists at ALS TDI share back with you immediately, privately, that give you a longitudinal trajectory of your disease so that you can be able to see the effects of changes in your treatment protocol on your disease trajectory. So let me try that in simpler terms. I have ALS and my ALS is sloping like this. Now in the precision medicine program, if you can see my fingers, just all of this is hard with a virtual background, we can timestamp when you change your treatment protocol. Now it could be as you enter a clinical trial, it could be when you start Radicava, it could be when you start, exercising more, taking TUDCA, eating, 500 apples a day, whatever it is. We can timestamp it. And then you can start to see, did the slope change? Did your trajectory of your disease change after that timestamp? So that's some of the data that you might want to bring into your doctor to look at, to talk about it. So for those of you who have not started clinical trials yet, who may want to get in one, I'm not plugging this because it doesn't make us any money. It costs us a lot of money, but it's a great tool for the science, for everybody with ALS and the science community as we begin to subtype ALS. Get into the precision medicine program. It will help you be able to see the effects of changes that you make in your protocol. What else? And I want to open it up to other people too, like blah, blah, Carol. There are people on this Zoom who have far more intimate knowledge of this disease than I hope to ever have because they are living with it and they've been through clinical trials and they've made the decision as to which one they wanted to join. And if there is anyone who is willing to share that story of their own,
Hey,
of
Carol.
participating in a trial, that would be great. Yeah, Erin.
Do you think that you could stop sharing your screen so that we can see everybody and that might help with
Yep,
other people speak?
I
Thank you.
sure can.
Nice to see everyone's faces.
Well, hi, hi. Look at all these people. Hi, Steph.
I
Hi,
did
everybody.
a question earlier that was, I guess, about inclusion criteria that I think you covered a little bit. But are there options out there for people that have been diagnosed for over 2 years?
Yes, there are. And, there may be studies, there are going to be some more trials that are going to be opening this year. And sometimes there is something about you or your disease that is really what someone is looking for. If you have SOD1 or C9orf mutated ALS, Biogen's looking for you, right? So sometimes there is an opportunity to leverage what you do have into a trial. But it will depend, but the answer is there is always that opportunity, yes.
Another question that I received earlier was if there are clinical trials on different herbal supplements, different herbal medicines, or CBD, THC, if those go through the same clinical trial pipeline and funnel as other drugs.
Well, it depends on, what the herb is, I suppose. This is for prescription medication, not things that are available over the counter. However, things with, a cannabinoid, for example, not only would go through this process, but also bring in other regulatory agencies like ATF, if you can believe that. How crazy is that? Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, because it's classified substance. So we haven't seen a phase 3 with, you know, a drug with THC and ALS yet, but we may.
Awesome. Thank you.
A couple more questions that we got in the chat earlier was, do I need to pay for the cost myself for gene testing to know if I qualify for any of those particular trials?
There are all different ways that you can do genetic testing. If you suspect, if there's reason to suspect that your disease is caused by a inherited mutation, you probably would want to look to see if you can identify what that mutation is. Our last town hall that we did was on that subject of genetics and ALS. So talk to Emily, make sure that everybody in the background I know is taking notes so that we can make sure that we can talk to everybody about their questions. But let's have one of our team have a private conversation with whoever asked that question and help direct them towards resources there.
Another question that I got was, I got privately, but was a question about if somebody does carry the familial gene, if they can participate in our precision medicine program.
You betcha.
And that was
Yes.
privately, so I wanted everybody to be able to know that as well.
If you have ALS, if you have bulbar ALS, sporadic ALS, familial ALS, limb onset ALS, slow progressing, fast progressing, the precision medicine program will benefit from your data. We are very grateful for it. You are helping everybody on this call and reaping benefits yourself as you are able to see your data shared back with you immediately, and you can interpret it based on changes in your treatment.
We are getting some questions about some specific drugs. Is that something that you want to hold off till then to talk
I would
to?
prefer to, yes. We are going to, if you would keep those questions and connect with the people after the webinar or after the town hall, Erin, to make sure that everybody knows that we're going to use those questions to inform our direction in the next segment of this, and that Erin or one of our team members will get back to you and answer that question in the interim anyway. But the fact that you have it helps us to know what everybody else will want to know in the next one of these.
Absolutely.
Right. I have just a couple more, Carol, if you want me to continue asking them from earlier today.
Sure.
So another question about entrance criteria was, how often is a PALS age used for entrance criteria?
Yep. You know, most start at 18. So if you are 17 and living with ALS, that could be a problem on an awful lot of fronts. And they go up to various ages. And they really are different, sometimes by a matter of years, and sometimes by a matter of 10 years for each one. So just take a look at that. Some end at 65, some at 75. So take a look.
I just learned, I learned from a webinar from the Healy platform trials, they will not have any age limit.
Upper age limit, yeah. And I know that there will be a couple of others coming down the pike that will be the same way. Is there anybody on here who's willing to share their experience of being in a clinical trial? Okay, that's fine.
Hey, Carol.
Yeah.
This is Stephen Greer. First of all, thank you. You've got a remarkable amount of knowledge and also passion, so thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
I've had diagnosed about 3 years, been on Radicava ever since it was approved. That seems to have worked well for me. I did participate in one clinical trial. I think it was called Fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it was a no-brainer for me. The way I look at it, I got nothing to lose. So, why not?
Did you choose it? Stephen, you seem great, so that makes me happy. And I'm delighted that you feel like Radicava is helping. That's wonderful. How did you choose to be in that trial? Was it one that was just nearby, or how did you choose it?
A collaboration with my neurologist. I made him aware that I'm very eager to explore any trial that's out there. I'll go anywhere. Using that criteria, he thought, my breathing was good. I thought I fit the profile, reached out to me, and then, I followed the process to get engaged. And it really wasn't that onerous. About the only thing was the requirement to physically come in so that they could take the required vitals. So I know depending on where you are in your journey with ALS, that may not be possible. But
yeah, and it can be exhausting too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a real pain. I mean, the location that they chose was in a downtown area.
Yeah.
And just, parking and all that crap. It's just takes a lot out of you because I think this disease is harder on the caregiver than it is on the patient most of the time.
Sometimes, yeah. Well, thank you for participating. You have advanced ALS treatments by doing so. I hope everybody realizes that. Like, we sound sappy when we say thank you for participating, but jeepers, we really mean it. If people do not enroll in these clinical trials, we will not have effective treatments for ALS. But in the meantime, as we talked about, they are experiments, Still in a phase 2, we're looking at safety.
Hi,
and you
Carrie.
won't know if you're getting the drug or not. So you are helping everybody.
Hi, Carol. This is Hamid Rafi. How are you?
Oh gosh, where are you, Hamid? I'm trying to find you. Hold on.
I am not on video, but
oh, no wonder, you tricker.
No picture.
Hi, Terry. How are you?
Good.
It's great to see both of you. Well, if you want to really see me, I can come on.
We'd like to see
you. Do whatever you're comfortable with.
Hamid. Hi, Hamid.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. Stephen, what was the trial that you just mentioned? I'm sorry, I missed the name of that.
Fortitude, Fortitude, and it may have been called something else. It was basically an oral pill you took, I can't remember, once or twice a day for some period of time. And you had to be pretty diligent about taking it. My understanding is that the trial was completed. They showed that it did positively impact, some of the areas, but maybe not all they were hoping for. So even though they know that the drug seems to provide some benefit, I don't think it's advanced and moved forward from there.
Yeah,
yep, that's a drug from Cytokinetics. That was a Cytokinetics trial. And it is currently not enrolling, but it is a company that is very committed to the ALS community. So hopefully we haven't seen the end of them.
Beautiful. Stephen, it's actually very remarkable that you, after 3 years, you're doing so well, with speaking and movement and everything else. So that is why I was asking, because it's important. My daughter is the one with the ALS. She participated in Carol and Terry know. She participated in a neuron trial with Brainstorm, and we're awaiting the results. So hopefully something positive will come out of that as well. But we're always looking for new things.
Yeah, you have to.
Has she had her final dose yet, Hamid? Is she still going? She does?
Yeah, she did have her.
Yeah, of course she did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the finals are done.
Yeah.
Monitoring now at the moment through September, and then later this year the results should be coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hamid, the other thing I would can't stress enough is, you know, you got to have a powerful support network. Stay positive and stay in faith. You know, that combination, in addition to medicine, is going to make the difference.
Thank you.
Sure.
We are rooting for her, Hamid, that is for sure.
Thank you, Carol. Yes.
I got a personal message from Amanda. Amanda, would you like to say anything about the trial?
Amanda, you have a smile on your face that says, oh, shoot, Terry, I wanted you to ask that question for me.
I am currently enrolled in the trial that I used to travel by plane, but now we drive, and I go once a month, and it's openly one after me, but I don't know whether I have the placebo or the drug before.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating, but honestly, I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for my kids. God forbid, I have 2 teenage boys. And to me, it's very important in participating because I'm helping the future. So.
Thank you
Yeah.
for doing it.
Bless
So,
a mom of 2 teenage boys, honestly.
yeah, wow.
It's tough, but there were worse stories than me, so I can't complain.
Oh.
How do you people do that? How do you not complain? I complain if I like bump my toe. Honest to God, this community is like nothing I've ever seen, which is why I am happy for you all to meet right now. I mean, look around at all of the other rectangles. You just heard Amanda. She is here to help you. She'll share your story. We can connect you with her if she's willing. These are the people that are going to help you through this.
Carol, I have a philosophy about this.
What is it, Marcia?
Okay, tell you what it is. We know what we're dealing with, and everybody else does not. So when my sister called me the other day, terrified because she had a low-grade fever and thought maybe she picked up the virus, she's dealing with the unknown. Even though I'm relatively a slow progressor, but my brother died within 3 years, and we're both sporadic, so who knows what we're dealing with. But we at least have an idea of what our battle is, whereas normally people just don't know what their battle is. And so when you—
Maybe I find even that explanation generous.
When you have the unknown, it's much more fearful.
Well, I think you're right, but I still think you're generous too.
We have a question in the chat from Mel, and he says, do you know of any trials including patients with bulbar, no speech or swallowing, but no current issues with limbs? So I don't know if that's something that we kind of talked about, if there's a differentiation between clinical trials for bulbar onset versus limb onset, just in general.
It could be included. Bulbar could be considered included in exclusion criteria, but more likely it would be broken down, for example, if the drug that was in trial was a pill and you can't swallow, that would not be a trial for you. But otherwise, it's worth fighting for, and we'll help you look at it together. Pablo.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Pablo.
Pablo.
Sorry, my English is awful, but I want to share something with you. The first thing is, I think United States is the best country in the world for getting access to a trial. You know, I came from Argentina from a year and 4 months, and I was diagnosed here just as I arrived. And now it's incredible how the people is working here. I got the diagnosis, then soon I got my genetic test that it gave me the opportunity to enter in the Toffersen trial. I am in Toffersen trial for a year now. I almost sure I received the drug from the beginning, because from March this year I started in the open label phase, but I started in a double-blinded protocol. But looking at my CSF analysis test, I can tell I was on the drug from the first time. My ALS is slow progression, but I can do it all by myself. I'm able to ride my bike, to lawn my grass in my garden with some
Can you believe you're
difficulty.
happy about that?
Sorry?
We know, can you believe you're happy about that? We know it's good news when you're
Yes,
happy that you can mow your grass.
Yes, for me it's incredible, because
Right,
when
I know it, I get it.
When I was diagnosed here more than a year before,
Yeah.
in May 2019, the doctor gave me another perspective. Well, I'm happy. The disease is progressing, but it's progressing really, really slow. And I want to share with you that get into a trial. This is the best country in the world to do it, because there are a lot of possibilities, and there are really good clinics for ALS. Argentina has a really good medicine. They got me diagnosed before coming here, but I can't do nothing in Argentina, not even get the genetic test. Well, I encourage you to try to start
I left
a
food
trial, because I think in my case and in other cases, it gives an opportunity and delays the sickness, and I'm hopefully about next year, because more drugs will be in the market.
Well,
That's it. Thank you.
You made me feel happy. That was lovely. Oops, sorry for the dog, everybody. That's Piper. But I love that you are able to mow your grass, ride your bike, that you're feeling well. I love that you're encouraging everybody. And, you know, these days we don't hear this is the greatest country enough. So that was wonderful to hear as well. Now there's something, sorry, hold on. Let me close this door so that I can tell you one more thing that you made me think of with the Toffersen trial. I'm still here.
Oh, it started my dog here.
One of the things that I do like the pandemic is getting to know people's animals and babies, I have to say. One of the things that you just made me think that I want to make sure I tell everybody or remind everybody when you're looking at trials, and we talked about currently enrolling and not yet enrolling. As time goes on, all of the science community is getting the message that they have to be more creative in trial design. Biogen is showing some creativity in their trial design for SOD1C9 mutated ALS, the antisense oligonucleotide trials. So they are doing it in cohorts, in sections. So let's say, for example, they intended to eventually enroll 200 people. They're not looking to fill those 200 people all at one time. It gives them the opportunity to do a little bit of interim analysis after each cohort. So if you see a trial that says is not recruiting or not enrolling one day, yet you hear through the grapevine that there are still spots available and you can't figure out why it's not showing up, that may be why. Again, questions like that, come to us or any of your community members that you see, hear, or know that will help you figure it out. We will always do that.
Hey, Carol, there's a question in the chat that I think is also kind of a good summary of everything we talked about.
Great.
So I think one thing that a lot of people feel with this disease is that when it comes to clinical trials, it's so amazing that there are over 50 now and there are so many, but that can be really overwhelming. So I think that it would be really helpful if we can kind of summarize the first 3 to 5 steps of how to get started. Just because I know you've covered that in everything we've talked about, and it's nice that everyone knows a lot of the vocabulary now to look at, but what would you say to somebody that's a little overwhelmed by everything?
First thing you're going to do is you're going to talk to your neurologist. It's the first thing you're going to do. You want to make sure that you are healthy enough to participate in a clinical trial all the way around, right? That's the first thing. You want to have that conversation with them. Second, you want to, when you meet with that clinician, you want to ask him or her for your records so that then you have what your forced vital capacity is, your slow vital capacity, all of that stuff. You will see on your records what is there formally as your disease onset, so that you'll know what to look for in a clinical trial in terms of the number of months out. And then you are going to think about the effect on your quality of life and the burden that a clinical trial could cause you. And then call on us to start talking through the next parts, and or at the same time, go to our website. You can go to the clinical trials database on ALS.net, and you can also go to imals.org and look at the ALS signal database. So start searching. Put a list together, print it out, start thinking about your pros and cons, and then talk to as many people as quickly as you can about those and help them. You know, we'll talk to you about it. I bet Stephen will talk to you about it. You know, find somebody to talk to.
Carol,
Yeah.
one of the things that I've heard is that I heard about Radicava and I heard about Riluzole.
Yeah.
What is the closest drug now to getting approved?
The next one, Neil, would be Neurone from Biogen, if it reads out well. Of course, we can't know what's closest to being improved because we can't know that they're going to make it through each
Carol,
phase of the clinical trial.
Carol, you meant Neurone from Brainstorm, not Biogen.
Oh, did I say Biogen? Oh, thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Brainstorm. Yes, so that is the next big trial. That is probably the most anticipated trial at the moment to read out. But with the creative trial design on some of the ASO trials at Biogen, treating just those 2 particular mutations, there is an opportunity for those to get to their answers quickly as well. There was also a rumor that Amylyx was going to go from a phase 2 to request FDA approval. I am not sure that that is really going to happen. So the one that's following the rules the best is the Neurone trial from Brainstorm. It is finishing up its phase 3, and we will know early next year whether or not it worked. And then, of course, there is, you know, the approval process from there.
Is the Centaur trial there too?
Which one is the Centaur? Is somebody Googling that for me to remind me which one Centaur is? That's the other thing, is we call the trial so many different names, by the company that is sponsoring it, by the name of the drug, and by the abbreviation of the trial. Who's got Centaur for me?
There's another name for AMX 0035, I believe.
Right.
Oh, okay. So that is the Amylyx trial. Yeah, same thing. That's exactly the one I was talking about. Yeah. Right. So that's, Phil, this is one of the things that I was saying yesterday, that, you know, we call them Centaur, we call them AMX 0035, we call them the Amylyx trial, and they're all interchangeable, but it can be confusing even for me. I can't always remember all of the names for every single one, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, the AMX 0035 trial, from what I understand, they're waiting for publication of the trial results in a peer-reviewed journal before they make their final approach at the FDA, and that publication should happen in the next couple of months.
That's awesome. Thank you, Bob. Did you get that, Neil?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
I can give you some more information about it too, Neil.
All right, guys, it is 6:29 here on the East Coast. We've been at this for an hour and a half. We will be at this until we are done, but not right here with all of you watching in rectangles. But as soon as we hang up, we're going to still be at it. We're going to be reaching out to you, making sure that we answered your questions. You're going to help us design the next one. The town halls are for you. They are not for me to talk. So let us know when we reach out to you what you want to learn in the next set, what you want to talk to your other community members about, what you want to learn from them, because we can have people talk to you that are not me. And in the meantime, a couple of things. Not only thank you for being here, but thank you for being willing to learn more about clinical trials so that you can help every single solitary person currently diagnosed with ALS and those that will be diagnosed after you. By participating in trials, that is what you are doing. That's huge. Thank you.
Carol, quick question.
Yeah.
This is Tommy. Hey, I wanted to ask, I did 27 years in the Army and retired in 2009.
Thank you.
And of course, my doctor just recently said, I think you've got signs of ALS. So I was just curious though, because he mentioned people in the military are twice as likely to get it than the rest of the population. Do you know anything about that?
I do know a lot about that, Tommy.
All right.
I used to run our government affairs before I did this. Where did you serve? And first of all, thank you for your service. And where did you serve?
I served 27 years in the Army, and I just retired in 2009 out here in Missouri. I just retired 2009. And then about 2 years ago, I started that falling stuff. And I've been seeing neurologists for about 1.5 years. So.
And how long ago did you get your diagnosis?
Well, I don't want to say I've got a diagnosis. I'll say that my doctor, my neurologist down in St. Louis, he said that he did the nerve conduction test and all this, and he says, Tommy, I think you've got the early signs of ALS.
Okay, well, Tommy, I hope to never see you again. I hope the answer is you have a pinched nerve.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, yes, he is right that there is about double the incidence of ALS in those that have been deployed.
Yes.
We see the highest incidence in pilots in the Air Force, not Navy pilots, interestingly enough. We also see veterans showing symptoms of the disease at earlier ages than the general population.
Right.
The one good thing I will say is some of the work that I did with a team early on the Hill was to make sure that all veterans diagnosed with ALS got the benefits of those that served in Gulf War I, because the original studies were done on just those who served in the first Gulf War, and they got full service-connected disability. So we worked with the Secretary of VA to make sure that those benefits were expanded to all that have served. So the one good thing is the VA has killer benefits for people with ALS.
Yeah, I'm enrolled with them.
Good.
Hey, I enjoyed the forum today. It's first time on, but got a lot of information. I enjoyed it. Thanks to you.
Good. I'm glad it was helpful, Tommy. And stay in touch. And if you ever want to meet any other people veterans with ALS, we're happy to introduce you.
One quick question, Tommy, and anyone in the military. There's always rigorous training and things of that nature. And I played football, and it has nothing to do with the Army. Thank you for your service. What I'm trying to find out is training and it seems like a lot of football players have ALS as well.
You're right, Neil. Yeah, there haven't been the studies that there have on those that have served in the military, but there is enough anecdotal evidence. If you collected the names of all of the people that we know with ALS who have played in the NFL, for example, you're going to see a far higher incidence rate in the NFL than you would even in amongst veterans. So
I'm
right.
wondering if it's a physical thing.
Well,
Maybe, we don't know, and there are people doing that really good basic work that Jonathan referred to in the early part of that funnel to try to figure out some of the causative aspects of ALS. But it is true, never, we see active people more than inactive people, again, anecdotally, and seldom does someone come into our lab and say, I've been a couch potato for the last 20 years and I have ALS. Everybody is always, I played football in college, I'm a military veteran, I'm a killer tennis player, I hike, I cycle. I don't know why. There are really, really good people trying to do the work to figure out why. We don't need to own that part of the puzzle, right? Because I can trust that somebody's doing that. So at ALS TDI, here's my thing. I bet that if I turn to you and to Tommy and I said, I can either tell you why you got ALS or give you a pill to stop it, you're going to go with the pill.
yeah.
So at least maybe you are, maybe you aren't. That's my mindset. So that's why I'm doing the work here. I am grateful to those epidemiologists and all the people that are doing the basic science to help us, like some of our science team is certainly doing, to understand this disease better than we ever have. And Steph, it always makes me so happy because if you're ever hosting a town hall or a webinar and Steph Atkins is at it, you can count on your confidence being boosted because if you just turn over to her, she's always smiling and laughing. And it really helps. Thank you, man. Anything else before we get you the heck out of here? Those of you with ALS who want you out living your life now for the rest of the evening. Thank you all very much again for your intention to potentially participate in trials, for supporting TDI, for being part of this community, and for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Nice to meet you.
See you on email.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye, all.
everybody.
See y'all later.
Thank you.
Time. Bye, Frank. Bye,
Thank
Deborah.
you.
Bye tomorrow.
Yep, talk tomorrow. Thank you.